Ready to unlock the full potential of your Vixen energy? In today's interview with high performance coach April Roberts, we delve into the transformative power of balancing your feminine and masculine energies so you can empower your journey as a female entrepreneur. Stay tuned. I am Gloria Grace Rand, founder of The Love Method and author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Live, Love, Engage: How to Stop Doubting Yourself and Start Being Yourself. In this podcast, we share practical advice from a spiritual perspective on how to live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically so you can create a life and business with more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Live, Love, Engage. Namaste. So glad to have you with us today. And if you are one of my wonderful women viewers, you may feel a lot of pressure to succeed, both in your personal life and your professional life. And that often leads to a lot of stress, anxiety, and burnout. And today's guest understands that because she's lived that. She's been a high achieving former attorney and financial advisor, and now she helps Gen X women achieve more abundance, love, spirituality, and alignment by connecting with their femininity. I hope I can speak today. I apologize. I'm tripping up on my words today. But before we bring on the lovely April Roberts, I do want to officially welcome you to the podcast, especially if this is your first time. I am Gloria Grace, and I do a little bit of a similar work to April in that I help female entrepreneurs really strengthen the connection to their inner wisdom so that you can create a life and business that is prosperous and deeply gratifying. And since I know we have sort of similar mission, shall we say, I'm looking forward to having this discussion, and I hope you are too. So without further ado, I'm going to bring April Roberts on to the show. Welcome, April.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. And I agree. I loved when I was reading about you, checking out the work you do. I feel we're very aligned. So I'm super excited for today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love finding out about our guests and about their story, and I've done a little research on you, and I know that you've been doing this work for this type of work for a few years, but you've got, of course, this rich background. I mentioned that you've been an attorney and a financial advisor, so I'd love to have you share with our audience a little bit about what got you into doing the work that you're doing today.
Awesome. I like to joke that I'm on my 4th career, which is the truth. I mean, potentially 5th. I'll share that with you. But yeah, I remember, I think a lot of us can relate. I'm 47, and I'm a Gen Xer, and so many of us had parents that worked really hard to get where they were. Many of us were among one of the first generations in our family to go to college. In fact, my dad was the first person in our family to graduate from college. My mom went with him, but she didn't actually graduate. And so, when I was going off to college, I was always a high achiever. Like, I was the nerdy kid who was like studying for the SAT on Saturday and the ACT. I thought it was fun to take practice exams, which interestingly, I was extremely social as well. So I'll share that with you when we get along. But, I really just thought, oh, you go to the best college you can. And so, I made it my job applying for colleges. And then I went to Vanderbilt University, and I got there. And my parents were like, what are you going to major in? And I was like, oh, English. I think it'd be fun to be an English teacher or writer. And my parents were like, we're not paying $50,000 a year for you to go to college. You can come home to Mississippi and go to college, if that's what you want to do. So I and my parents had my best interest at heart. They weren't trying to do anything bad to me, but that was the way they thought, right? You come out with a good job that pays you well, and even though my parents were entrepreneurs and my grandparents, I mean, it was still in very practical professions. And so I really kind of decided, oh, well, what do I want to do? Well, with my degree, I can go to law school, which made my parents very happy. And because I was a really good test taker, I got into Notre Dame Law School. And, I thought, well, I'll be a litigator because I love talking, whatever. They were top 10 litigation. They had a program in London. Honestly, that's why I went there, because I wanted to go live in London for a year, if truth be told. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Um, and so, I kind of found myself in law school. And Grace, I actually remember the end of the first year going, oh my gosh, if I crammed all this in my head, like I'm going to do something with it, right? So I don't even want to say that I chose my path into the legal career. It wasn't the path chosen for me, but it was like the practical choice. And I don't think I would have made the practical choice left to my own devices. So, fast forward, I get out, I end up working somehow for the most prestigious firm in Atlanta. Like, I make a lot of jokes about how I got that job because I was not law review. I very much enjoyed my time in law school. As I mentioned, I was very social. So I end up at this law firm. And again, I love the social aspect of working there. We were very connected. I got to go to the Braves games. I got to go to the Hawks games. I got to go to events. And so I thought, oh, my life is cool, forgetting that I was working 80 hours a week, right? And grinding it out when I wasn't doing these fun things, which, by the way, at 25, you can do all of that. Today at 47, I don't think I could. Um, so it's kind of a long story. Hop in anytime you want and interrupt me. But what happened for me is I fell in love, and I fell in love with my ex-husband, who was Italian, and he moved to the United States to be with me. And suddenly, when there's someone else being affected by your 80-hour weeks, and although life is great and I'm getting to, flit around and I'm making lots of money, it really changes your perspective. And I realized that that wasn't a sustainable life I wanted for the future. Um, and I feel very blessed that that occurred to me at age 27, because I think a lot of people don't have that moment until late 30s, 40s, or 50s. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. You were very well blessed to be able to have that awareness at such a young age, especially, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you are a parent or not, but especially if you had it before you have any children. So, yeah.
Well, at that point, I planned to be a parent, and so that was very much in my thinking as well, right? Like, how do I manage all of this? Because I grew up in South Mississippi, so the deep South, where family's very engrossed and involved, and not that it's only there, but that was kind of top priority, and so that was in my thinking. So anyway, what happened was we were in the midst of getting his green card after we got married, and his grandfather got sick, and his grandfather was the closest person in the world to him, and he wasn't allowed to leave the country because of that process. And so I just remember being at the lawyer's office going, at this point I'm 27, 28. Well, I guess we're moving to Italy, because I just saw this person I love, whole face fall. Um, and so he was on a plane the next day and I came a month later. So that was a crazy time trying to wrap up my job, sell everything we own. He's in Italy looking for us a place to live. And in my first year of marriage, I arrived in Italy under these circumstances, which, it's funny because I teach the 5 pillars of Vixen, and I'm like, gosh, if only my like 27, 28-year-old self had these 5 pillars when I was dealing with all of this, it would have been so much better. Because what happened for me is I went to Italy. My law degree wasn't good. I didn't think about that ahead of time. I couldn't get a job in a law firm doing anything else because they told me I was overqualified because I was a lawyer. And so I suddenly, this kid that had taken ACT exams on the weekend and always planned the future, I suddenly found myself in this position where I was a housewife with no children. which I think had there been children, it would have been different. And so I really struggled. And what I ended up doing was teaching English to professionals and lawyers. And I got paid a whopping 12 euros an hour. Now, when I left Atlanta, I was making at 25, I was making six figures, right? So suddenly I'm making 12 euros an hour. It does a number on your self-worth. And that's a big thing that I coach women on is our inherent self-worth. And then, I'm in a whole nother country without my support system. And then it turned out that my husband had an addiction problem that I didn't know about. So he had stopped when he met me. But of course, when we moved back to Italy, as many people do when they're in their comfort zone,
Yeah.
they start the problem again. So I spent 5 years working on that with him until I was mentally, emotionally, and physically depleted and just, had to leave. And so I found myself back in the US going, what the heck do I do now? I've sold
Mm.
everything I owned. We've spent all our savings. I'm like 32. I mean, at 25, when I was making six figures, this is not at all what I imagined would be going on at 32. And,
And why
and I
and
know
why
it's
your
not.
parents didn't want you teaching English, which you wound up doing though, right?
Yes. Isn't it funny? And I don't mean to I can laugh now at it. Obviously, it was a very painful time, but I share my story because I know so many women find themselves maybe not in that extreme of a situation, but in a situation where they're just like, oh, okay, what do I do next? I'm not feeling fulfilled. I'm not feeling myself. I'm not, owning my worth, which is incredibly important, women. And Grace, I know you're very spiritual, but standing in your dignity as a woman is extremely important. So we have to learn to do that. So again, I was kind of blessed that this all happened to me at 32 instead of in my late 40s and early 50s. Like I see it happening with a lot of women getting divorced these days. And so I kind of joke, that's why I call myself the fairy godmother. I'm not the expert, but I'm ahead of the curve on learning some of this stuff only because it happened to me at a younger age, right? So anytime I can help a woman and guide through transitions in life, I really love it. So I found myself back at my parents' house and I got a good job practicing law, making money, started filling my savings back up. And then I realized my dad was helping people with finances. And I didn't know he did retirement planning. I thought he was a stockbroker, right? And so I didn't know the difference because I wasn't that financially savvy. And then when I learned what my dad did and helping them plan for the future versus what I did as a litigator, inheriting problems and trying to, work them out, it was very appealing to me. So I kind of jumped in with both feet, got licensed, and I was my dad's intern for a year and a half, I'd say. After which I moved to Houston. I'll shorten this now at this point, opened my own practice, ended up opening up 3 offices around the Houston area, growing that practice to multiple 7 figures. And I think this is important too, Grace, is I did it myself. I never had funding because women only get 2% of funding. And a lot of times they feel that's holding you back. But in business, I mean, treat it like your household. You're not spending on things that you can't afford, right? I would literally make money, use a portion of that money to market and make the next money. And then I'd use a portion to market and make the next money. Um, and I had a little bit of savings to start, so I had been lucky to like quickly save money to do this. And so yeah, that was 2010. I moved to Houston, started as a financial advisor in 2008, and I sold that practice last year, actually a year ago, because I was feeling called to make impact on a different level.
Mm, wonderful. Now, you mentioned earlier, and I want to kind of get into it because I love your story that you've been able to do this. And you mentioned earlier that you wish you had known then, like at 27, about Vixen energy. So
Right.
kind of just slid that in there. So for those of us, who are listening and watching, they're going like, "Huh? Wait, what? What is that?" So can
Yeah.
you take us through what is that, and how has that been able to help you and help your clients as well?
Yeah, so I coach so all my clients are female entrepreneurs. We now have a program for startup, which a lot of women in the program are still working corporate. They have a side hustle and they're trying to replace their corporate or their full-time job with their side hustle. The next program is a mastermind for women doing six figures to seven. And then we have a third program for women doing seven figures plus. And the reason I do that is I feel so many of us make the mistake of taking advice from someone that's at a different level than us, if that makes sense. I think it's important to surround yourself with people going through the same challenges and having the same wins as you, especially as a business owner. But Vixen Energy, anyway, my point is at all levels, when a client comes on with me the first 90 days, we're going through the 5 pillars of Vixen, which number one is what I call time leveraging, energy management, and confidence building. So really understanding the interplay of these three elements and setting yourself up for success all the time. The second step is knowing yourself. So part of that is knowing your personal core values, what's important to you. So for example, for me right now, I'm very head down working on a launch, something we're about to launch with the business, but adventure is one of my core values. So I already have a trip to Italy and Dubai planned for the first week of May after this launch is finished, right? So I have that light at the end of the tunnel that's going to fill my bucket back up. So I think knowing what really helps you move. And part of this is also understanding masculine and feminine energy. And I think, Grace, that's what you want to talk about a lot. And so, as a lawyer and then a financial advisor, I was in male dominated industries. And if we talk about the financial industry, 12 years ago, 30% of the industry was female. Today, 30% is female. So you're not going to tell me that there are no women growing up and saying, I want to be a financial advisor, right? What I feel is happening is women are getting into their 40s, 50s, 60s. Like most of us, we're taking care of parents. I don't have children, but most of my clients do. And there's all these competing interests. And at work, you're having to go into your masculine energy and it leads to burnout. Hold on, Grace.
Okay.
Not sure if that came out. 1 second. And, because I'm very familiar with the financial industry, I can talk to it. You're appointment based. So for me, if you're a mom with kids at home, great. You meet with your clients from 9 o'clock in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon. If it's important for you to take your kids to school and pick them up, other women may have that handled, right? And they're fine working 9 to 5. But this is if you have control of your own schedule. If you work for one of the large corporate entities or one of the big banks, it is still a very masculine industry where this isn't necessarily accepted. When I think back to my law firm, when women came of a certain age, you were either encouraged to go of counsel or quit because they thought you were going to have kids. And as a litigator, it wouldn't be sustainable and you wouldn't make partner. And in fact, we had one female partner out of 50 on my team. And so one, it's not just that the schedule isn't conducive, it's that it's a masculine energy environment, meaning GSD, get stuff done, is the PG version of that, right? And we women operate a little differently. Now, we do have to go into our masculine energy to get stuff done. And in fact, it's funny, Grace, I was talking to a friend the other day and she's like, I never thought I was feminine because like I'm very direct, I'm very get stuff done, all this. And I go, because she joined, I was doing a class on using your feminine energy in sales so they don't feel icky. And she goes, I'm not feminine at all. And I was like, you teach people to grow community through Facebook groups to get more clients and nurture that group. You're nurturing and building community. That sounds very feminine to me. And she was like, oh my gosh, you're right. She was like, I always thought like I just had to get in the flow and it was easy and it came to me. And I mean, I think we can agree nothing comes easy, right? You can't sit on the sofa, eat bonbons and say, hey, I'm in my feminine energy, I'm receiving. You have to do the work and trust that the results will come. But there's definitely a difference between your masculine and your feminine energy, and knowing when to use each and how to transition, I think for women is very critical to survival and avoiding burnout.
Mm. Can you give an example of, like when you need to transition and then how you would go about doing that?
Yeah. This came up. So I started helping clients with this. I was kind of coaching on the side when I still had my financial business. And a lot of times it's because I was part of masterminds run by a man. And so when women wanted advice, they would be referred to me a lot of times if it was more female specific. And so I was kind of coaching for free. And then I started getting clients and charging for it because I was like, wow, I keep getting asked to do this. Let's do this as a business, and then I got called to do that. But in 2020, you can imagine a lot of women were working from home, right? And if you had a demanding job, there's your family right on the other side of that door. And so you're in here boom 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 on a heavy schedule if you don't have control of it. And then suddenly you have to walk through that door and be a mom and a significant other. And so a lot of my clients were struggling with that. They were feeling very guilty about the energy they were bringing into their household and their family. They didn't understand it was energy. Like they just didn't, they were feeling guilty about how they were showing up with their family, right? Because they were carrying that GSD energy into the household. And so what I did with one client, for example, I said, "Hey, what's that behind you?" And she was like, "Oh, it's a balcony." She was in her guest bedroom working. And I said, "Could you go sit out there? Like, what do you like do?" I knew she liked tea. I knew she did yoga. I was like, "Could you do a couple of yoga stretches and like go out there and have a cup of tea, maybe light a candle, do something before you walk through the door?" So
Mm.
if you think about it, men are very good at this, right? They normally come home. I mean, this is a very stereotypical traditional view, but they come home, kiss the family, and then they disappear for 10 to 15 minutes, right? Or they turn on the TV and veg. And this is men transitioning their energy to be home. And so we
Wow.
women think we're superheroes and we can be all things to all people at all times.
I love that. I never really thought about it that way, but you're right. They really do need to transition. And yeah, I know during during 2020, it was lovely because my husband was working from home suddenly, who wasn't before. I had been working from home by myself. It was nice, now all of a sudden I've got somebody else in the household. And so having to try to, navigate that and was definitely challenging. And I had it easy. I mean, compared to a lot of other,
Yeah.
millions of women, frankly. So I love that you were able to suggest and offer that way of being able to
Yeah.
do it. I want to play I don't know, necessarily devil's advocate a little bit, but I
Yeah.
wanna, you know, ask you, like, why should someone do what you're suggesting, or maybe how could they get it wrong even?
I don't think you can get it wrong. I think that awareness is 50% of the battle in all things, right? So just becoming aware, it's like when I coach on time leveraging, I mean, the first thing I do is tell my client, okay, open up your calendar so I can see what your architecture looks like. In fact, I was doing small group coaching right before I hopped on here. And one new member to the group, I was like, "How much time do you spend architecting your calendar?" And she was like, "What are you talking about?" And so, I explained that to her, like, what's your ideal calendar? How do things fit in? Where do you plan things? So anyway, that's first step. Second step is I tell them, "Hey, for the next week, I want you to take note of two things. Number one, every time you get annoyed, irritated, or resentful, and what activity you're doing or what happened. And number two, when you really feel in the flow, your energy's good, and you're doing an activity that gives you energy." So basically, I want them to understand the activities that suck their energy or irritate them and the activities that give them energy. Because for me, that's time leveraging, right? I'm not going to do an
Mm,
activity that sucks my energy right before I do a really important activity that should give me energy or needs a good result. And so to me, this is a very feminine way of managing your calendar, right? The flow of energy. So there's no getting it wrong. And so The other challenge is we women have this perfectionist complex, right? And so we want to get everything right out the gate, and you're not going to get it right out the gate. Like, think about it like playing with your calendar or testing your calendar. I had this aha in the last year, like, gosh, I don't play enough because, I sold a business where I was running a team and had hundreds of clients. And then I have a startup company that, we're working with, and I coach all my clients. And so it's like this veil of responsibility always on you. And I think we women feel it very strongly. And I was like, when did I stop playing? I need to play in my business. So now I take 2 hours on Saturday. I'll go into Canva and play and do something creative. I'll try to write something. I'll play with my calendar, if I don't have time during the week. And so I'm really just playing to see how things feel. Does that make sense?
It does, and because at first I was thinking you're talking about just, sort of playing in general, but I like that concept of actually
Mhm.
playing in your business because I do like to fool around, times I love Canva as well, and to be able to have fun creating new, images and things like that, but to actually I think even just to set up the time to do that, I think
Mhm.
that's really good because sometimes you may wind up, maybe you're doing that, but it's taking you away from other stuff because maybe you just wind up going down a rabbit hole or something.
It becomes a distraction instead of
Mm,
something positive. So now we've all,
yeah,
like, slapped ourselves on the hand and said, "Don't do that," right?
right,
But it
right.
actually is necessary.
Yeah, I love that. Um, what are you curious about right now?
Hmm. Oh, goodness. Oh, so a friend of mine, this is actually funny. Well, my number one curiosity is spiritually based. I feel at this point in my life, the way I have adventure, I mean, yes, I get to go to Dubai for the first time. That's going to be cool. But my true adventure is self discovery. And, for me, I believe in God. Other people believe in other things, but just discovering, like deepening that relationship. And what I'm very curious about is how it then shows up in my life. And also, I'm doing a podcast this week on it, how other people react, because we're at this interesting time where I think it's important for us to be having these conversations, but having these conversations are very challenging, right? So like my biggest curiosity, and I have three spiritual coaches coming on to have this conversation, is how can you have a loving, compassionate conversation when you have different belief systems?
Mm,
Because I feel a lot of the things we disagree on are often immaterial. I know I might get blowback from that, but if you think about it, like, if we all showed up in love and compassion all the time, I mean, who would disagree with that? And the world would be a much better place.
yeah, I agree with that 100%, and I love that, and thank you for mentioning that you are host of your own podcast as well. So can you share with the audience what that is in case they want to check it out?
Awesome. It's called The Vixen Voice, and we're on all the podcast channels. Plus, we're at Vixen Gathering on YouTube. So we actually put all episodes on YouTube as well.
All right, excellent. As do I as well. So this will
Love
this
it.
will be there once I do my little, a little bit of creative magic. I don't do a lot of editing, but I do add a tease to it now. So I will
Yeah.
have that. Um, is there anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't, or any other last point you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Well, I think a lot of times women are confused at this concept of feminine and masculine energy to begin with. And you can look up what are feminine energy traits. And like we talked about, it's connection, it's community, creativity is a feminine energy. Playfulness is a feminine energy. And so receiving is a feminine energy, which I find really interesting because most women have a hard time receiving, right? So when you
Mhm.
start learning to receive, which doesn't mean you can't give, it just means, again, we're receiving, we're accepting that energy, and we're giving our energy. So many of us block the receiving. I was guilty of this, right? I had this huge aha a few years ago, and I would do a daily meditation to imagine receiving so that I could retrain myself. And I just got chills thinking about it because, Grace, when you understand the beauty of giving and receiving the full cycle, it is just so amazing. And so many of us are missing out because we're blocking the receiving, right? We're like, nope, I'm good. I don't need help, or I don't need that. Oh, don't worry about it. Thank you. And so I just think if you practice receiving and when you're just happy and in the flow, you know when you're in feminine energy. You feel softer, like your wrinkles kind of smooth out. We all know that moment where we're like, wow, I'm kind of glowing, right? And that usually means you've tapped into your feminine energy. And look, all of us have masculine, feminine energy. It doesn't matter, what your gender is, what your sex is. We all have masculine and feminine. We women are very good at adapting. That's a feminine trait, adaptability. So, what I like to warn is don't let your superpower of adaptability become your kryptonite, meaning that you're adapting into masculine energy all the time or that you're adapting to give all the time. If you just start receiving, having these soft moments, and I love your mission because self-love, I really think self-love and self-forgiveness on a daily basis and also forgiving everyone else get you there very quickly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I love that one of the pillars of my program is about opening your heart to receive. So
Yes.
because yeah, we're so quick to, brush off even something as simple as a compliment. Someone says, "Oh, your
Mhm.
hair looks good today." And you're like, "Oh, I really need a haircut." I mean, it's like, no, just say thank you. Just be open to that because
Yeah.
that's how you're going to get more. You've got to, as you said, have that give and receive, that it has to be in balance. So thank you so much for being here. How can someone connect with you if they want to know more about the work that you're doing in the world?
Awesome. Well, you can follow us on YouTube at Vixen Gathering. Our website is vixengathering.com, where you can check out our coaching programs. And I have a Facebook group, Abundant Business Women, where I
Mm.
actually go live every Friday and do free coaching. And so that's a true community. There are many Facebook groups where they're just promoting. We have a true community where we're having conversations and sharing. So if that sounds good to you, I'd love to see you there.
All right, awesome. I will be sure and have all of that information in the show notes. So, for those of you who are listening or watching, wherever you're watching this, make sure you go to liveloveengagepodcast.com and then you'll find this episode and you'll be able to get all that information. So, thank you so much for spending a little part of your day with us today. I know you
Thank you.
shared some great information really to help us all with that balancing that feminine and masculine. It's so important. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was so lovely.
Mhm. And I do want to thank all of you as well for being here today, for listening. And if you love the show, I hope you will make sure that you, number one, are subscribed on either your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. And, I'd love reviews as well. So if you want to give us a rating, that would be great. And hope you will join us next week. We are going to have a wonderful woman named Gina Cavalier on, and she's going to be talking about healing, self-love, and also a very important topic about how to surviving suicidal ideation. So it's going to be an interesting conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. So until next time, though, I encourage you all to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.